these big companies, tech companies, are pretty much scraping everything that's out there and building their models. You have concerns, well, I don't want to feed data to it. I don't want data leaving my kind of secure environment.
AI isn't something that needs to integrate into every facet of your organization to work. It can find very niche areas where you can just sort of plug it in or put it on top of some data and just see what it can do. It doesn't need to be a huge exercise. It can be very, very much like a step-by-step, stage-by-stage process.
I've heard NLPs may not be that accurate. We can't risk having inaccurate answers.
I'm keen to jump into those and do some podcasting kind of myth busting.
All right, let's do it.
So what was the first one we had?
Yeah, it's I have data concerns. I don't want my data used to train AI companies.
I think that's an interesting one because, I mean, Joe, we've seen a range of different people that we've interacted with have different perceptions again. And that's from all the news that comes out initially on, well, I don't want my data to be used, because we look at even a lot of the lawsuits that are coming out now in terms of training the model, where these big companies, tech companies, are pretty much scraping everything that's out there and building their model. So, you have concerns, well, I don't want to feed data to it. I don't want data leaving my kind of secure environment and going away. And I know that from what we've locked down, there's been such a movement towards containing everything, and also companies being completely from a security perspective completely compliant with that, and also building them into the environments. Like we've seen with Microsoft, for instance, with Azure OpenAI, having it contained in your own development environment, so your data is not leaving anywhere.
It's a technology like any other, right? You've got your data and you're giving it to a third party, right? I don't think the landscape's really changed compared to giving your data for any other purpose to a company to do some analysis on, or data analysis or anything like that. You're handing over your data, and it's all just about the trust that you have with what they're going to do to that data and agreements that you have. Right now with things like ChatGPT, if you putting your company data into that, the agreement is with ChatGPT, they are going to use that to train their own models. They're going to ingest that. I mean, you just need to be aware of where your data is going. But once you're aware of that, you can look at alternatives if you don't want your data going out, and you, again, choose something like Azure and deploy your own model within your own Azure space and just use that, and it doesn't go anywhere. So I think if the question comes down to, is my data going to be used to train AI companies? Again, the answer is, has your data been used anywhere else before? The same agreements stand. I think you just got to be aware of the options out there and what you want. How sensitive your data is. And then there's obviously costs around, you want to build something yourself or you want to use a third party, what's cheaper, what makes sense to you. Just got to work through that. Ricardo, I don't know if you have any ideas on that one either.
I'm not as smart as you guys.
So that doesn't look like. So what we're saying there, we're not entirely busting that as. No. I think we can kind of say, look, there are setups that you can use that will be optimized to any level of security you would need.
Correct.
Or they're ones that can make your data external and used for training.
Yeah.
So I think at least we can answer that and say, for anyone that is sitting on the fence and thinking, well, I'll never use one of those, it's not the case. You can tighten it down as, it can be as tight security-wise as you want it to be.
Yeah, I think the only thing about data and what I've seen is there's one called Poe. It's for Quora. Everybody has probably seen that website or visited one time or another. It's kind of like a Reddit, but people answer questions. Basically, they use their AI to take questions and answers from other people and then post that as the answer. So before, people were getting credit for answering those questions and seen as the expert. Now, with whether it's Google or somebody else, if they're not referencing who made that comment or that answer, I think it's completely unfair, because you don't know where it's coming from, the source. And that's not taking credit for it is really concerning too, for the people that actually are creating the content and are taking the effort to do something like on Quora, where it is free.
Yeah, that's definitely a different side to it. I mean, just to sort of clarify for myself here, like I think Bert and I were jumping onto, I'm a company with data and I need to,
Yep.
get the AI to ask questions on that, answer questions on that data. And I want to send that data out. That's where Billy and I were going. You're more talking about data in terms of that's really out there. Like you've already published it. You've answered questions before, or you've created art, or, you've written a book, or whatever the case is, your material is out there. Now AI is using that to train itself. And there's nothing you can do. You didn't come to that agreement. That's a totally separate side of data concerns, at least from like, business perspective, but just as valid. And it's interesting. This was a bit of a breakaway, but even with stuff like AI art, there's a huge backlash against that because so much of it was used to train their models without any consent. They just sort of scraped a whole bunch of huge art sites and just sort of built that up. And there's like a really negative perception on that. Big topic to get into.
Yeah, for
Yeah, I
sure.
was just about to say, wow,
Different
that's controversial for the first podcast.
Yeah.
Going to step carefully there.
You want to jump to the second one, or you want to conclude on this first topic?
No.
Okay.
I mean, I think we've said, probably from a business perspective, it's it can be as secure as you need it to be.
Yeah.
There are plenty of options out there.
So for the second one, is it myth or fact? Our business is so complex, the amount of customization needed to set this up would be prohibited. What are your thoughts on that?
That's an interesting one because I mean we've seen setups that are particularly diverse in terms of technologies used, software that's been implemented, or different applications. But what's nice about this, especially with everything in the cloud, is applications can be linked through a sort of central resource. So you can think that if you're using, if we're talking about a solution that uses an NLP, you can have all your data in a sort of single center that can be used and integrated across apps. So, and the integration points can be really simple. So you can have that knowledge being spread across a diverse set of different applications fairly simply. So I guess it depends, but you often think, well, if you've got 20 products, do you need 20 separate instances of this? And are you going to have to duplicate that effort when really they could be connected from a single kind of technological thread?
I'm kind of viewing this question a little bit differently because, first of all, like it's such an ambiguous question. This is like an unfair question. Like our business is complex. The customization need to set this up would be prohibitive. Well, what are you trying to set up, right? I mean, AI again is such a huge topic. Like, what are you actually trying to do? That would be the first question. It could be something really simple, or it could be something really, really advanced. Like if you want to get your documentation trained by AI. Pretty straightforward. If you want to try and do predictive analysis using AI, which is machine learning, on future, costing trends or market analysis, that's really complex. So it can scale wherever you want. So really ambiguous question. But what I do want to add to that, though, is that the tools that are out there that are available to integrate AI into this have become so much better. As Billy was saying, like a year ago, we were trying to get something working with some data. It was really tricky. We had to sort of work around it. Within 3 months later, there were tools out there that were doing exactly what we wanted to do. And just the way that the industry is really moving, especially with AI, has always been a very, again, scientific kind of niche data scientist industry to be in. But because it's kind of expanded out, and this is really what's created this whole AI boom, is not really just the technologies that are available. Yes, GPT is amazing, but NLPs have been around for quite a while. It's just the ease of use of actually being able to harness that power and the tools, the APIs, the infrastructure that they're putting in place, or the cloud infrastructure that's available. That's making it sort of, even if you have a very complex scenario or a complex business, integrating with those external tools has become really simple to set up. You don't need to be an advanced data scientist to do it anymore. You just need to understand what's capable. I don't need to understand the inner working of what this model is doing. I can just pick a model from a service listing, decide which one is the best for my use case. It creates the endpoints. I just, send through my data and parameters, and it gives me, an output return to satisfy whatever that small business use case is. So yeah, I would say that's pretty much my answer. The tools have become so much better. It's so much easier, and it's just continuing every day. Even with Azure, they bring out new tools every time I visit that site, Azure AI Studio or OpenAI Studio. There's new tools there every day, and it's just getting better and better. Even complex, previously machine learning problems, which are really complex, you can now just sort of, anyone can do it. Makoto, you've never looked at it. I guarantee if you were to spend 2 weeks in it, you'll be able to get it going too. The documentation is that simple, and the tools are available. It's like
maybe
integrate that
3
really well. Maybe one. It's actually really amazing. But yeah, maybe an hour. But that's sort of my takeaway from that.
That's it. I think you summed it up well. Just the fact is, if we were talking a year or two ago, yes, it probably would be, prohibitive. There's so many options now, and the barrier to kind of understanding and to access all of those has come down. And I think that's an important point to really highlight.
We can literally ask ChatGPT how to do something complex. Like you can ask AI how to make integrating AI easier, and you'll actually make easy ground with that.
I think just from my perspective, I look at it from if your business is trying to integrate it within your own product and you want to customize whatever you've integrated, I'm looking at it from a user experience perspective. We've been asked to improve on how to, whether that's entering prompts, how the output looks, because it's very text heavy. But if you want to sell it and customize it where you're selling it, it's like a B2B situation. And so we've helped that output look more user-friendly. The inputs that you do, you're not typing away, you're not reading at paragraphs and paragraphs of information, but something that is improving the user experience so you can get to the questions quickly. You can understand and group the output of those questions more effectively. And so that's what we see as far as customization of what's important, especially when you're integrating it within your own product.
Without going into the UI too much, I see this is probably the most exciting development, is the fact that we're going to get closer and closer to a conversational UI for complex business applications.
Mm-hmm.
And that is transformative because, you no longer think of business functions isolated to a specific screen. You break down so many of the complexities around using software just by being able to interact with software through something like an NLP that's linked to automation. Incredibly powerful. It's probably discussions for another podcast, but I wanted to put that out there because it is exciting stuff.
Yeah, and I think we could jump to I want to combine kind of 3 and 4 points of our myth and facts, but I think they're kind of related as far as the cost of setting it up is excessive, and obviously having the lack of expertise within the organization. I think they kind of go a little bit hand in hand of what is the cost of integrating? Do I need to hire new people? Do I bring on consultants? Do I bring on Microsoft or Google, whoever is integrating it? Do I bring on their team to do it? Is that cost effective? I don't know, what's your thoughts on that?
I think the setup being excessive, I think you need to look at it in a number of different ways. So what is it? Again, it comes back to Joe, what you were saying earlier. What is it you need to do? But also, what products are you looking at? Because we've seen products that have integrated AI and they charge a fortune for what is often possible just using tools directly from a big software company like Microsoft. So you can cut down the cost hugely if you just have a small investment in people that understand what they're doing with that technology. I also think that there's something to be said about how implementing certain technology will affect your efficiencies. And that's a big one. And it probably overlaps one of the points we have a bit later. But, what are you going to be saving by implementing this? If you've got staff and it's going to allow them to work X percentage more efficiently, what does that look like in terms of your saving? What new business are you going to get from that? So I think that cost can be offset on a lot of the value adds that implementing something like that offers. I would say that's at least the cost of setting up is excessive. I think that busted in terms of if you're using the right tools, it doesn't have to be.
Yeah.
There are a lot of really, it even goes down to what model you're using. If you want to go with an NLP approach, use a slightly older model. Token cost is very low. And it can still offer a massive amount.
With the expertise, and I mean, the firsthand kind of the background and expertise. It's not everybody's going to say, "Oh, well, I'm a prompt engineer. Give me 500,000 a year," or some crazy thing that I've heard. But I mean, what is it as far as the expertise that you see that you need to have some kind of success with this, or not hiring the wrong person who thinks they're an AI expert on their resume, but they really aren't.
As with anything, like, you need to trust the person that's giving you the advice, right? And that person, especially in the AI space, is in a space where there's thousands of solutions out there. A lot of them are just either vaporware or not really going to solve your use case, and need someone to really navigate through that, understand what you're trying to accomplish, and then getting the best tool for that. You do need that experience, I think, especially now, because there's just so much out there. The cost of setting it up, though, again, obviously variable, but as I was saying earlier, with the tools available, I think it is quite quick to get sort of POCs going around this and to do a very quick implementation. AI isn't something that needs to, integrate into every facet of your organization to work. It can find very niche areas where you can just sort of plug it in or put it on top of some data and just see what it can do. It doesn't need to be a huge exercise. It can be a period of a few months where you just sort of understand the landscape, understand what's there, build out some prototypes to target those specific scenarios and make sure that they can work with them. And then you can always expand it out from there. It doesn't have to be, okay, we're going to integrate AI, let's set up a year project, and at the end we'll have integrated AI. It doesn't need to go down that road at all. It can be very, very much like a step-by-step, stage-by-stage process. Understanding things, picking the best tooling, getting our input into what that would be, the costs involved, the infrastructure that you would need. And again, because there's so many great cloud services out there for you, you don't need to buy all these different sort of software packages and platforms. You can just use pay-as-you-go services and just sort of try out these different scenarios, try out different POCs, see what works for a problem, and then go from there. It can be really, really sort of easy and effective to get these up and running. It doesn't need to be some huge undertaking.
So what are we saying in terms of company thinking, well, they're lacking the expertise to actually pull something off? And I think from what you were saying, it's really... I suppose it depends. If you've got someone that is fairly knowledgeable with solutions potentially, but there are also a lot of teams that you could engage as well, to provide sort of more solid advice around what you should proceed with.
That's exactly it too. Even if you have someone who understands AI quite well, understands certain technologies really well, they could be completely correct in what they're saying and the advice that they're giving you. But the landscape is so huge now, I almost feel like you need to actually get a few opinions on which of the best technologies to use and what's out there. It's evolving so quickly. A single person cannot understand the entire landscape. You can understand, I think we have a very good understanding of our niche areas where we've used AI and what's available there. And I think depending on what you're trying to accomplish, if someone is understandable in another aspect of AI, it doesn't necessarily mean that's even going to slightly translate over to what you're trying to accomplish with this specific problem. And it's rather better to reach out to people who have experience in what that is, and then discuss with them, get that perspective too.
You ready to jump to the next one?
Why not?
All right, let's
roll here.
I've heard NLPs may not be that accurate. We can't risk having inaccurate answers. We've heard, I think, a little bit about. Yeah, we heard a little bit about this with. It could be whether it's a law firm, they're using AI as research and getting the wrong answers. It could be, if you don't have the experts looking at this, at the output, who knows what do they call it when the AI, basically is making things up. Hallucinations. That's it.
And that's it. That's where it's been so interesting, especially with the work we've done, kind of working closely with different NLPs and understanding, also seeing the progressions in terms of accuracy, how those models have been tweaked, but also this is going to the prompting. I'm a firm believer in, even if you're working with an older, cheaper model, to match your costs, if your prompting is correct, if it's watertight, you can lock down that accuracy to a high degree. And it depends really just how interpretive you want it. So I think that's a point to kind of.
No offense to any AI models that are listening right now. If we didn't call you cheap.
Yeah, my take on accuracy is right now, you couldn't 100% I'm going to trust AI completely with, at least with the NLP side of things. And if I was running a hospital and it was telling me to do something, no matter how well you've tweaked that, and again, as been saying, the tools are improving year by year. It's getting better and better. Even if you have a 95% accuracy rate, though, that 5%, depending on your business, can mean a lot to you. But I think the purpose of AI and really the advantages to that outside of it are that 95%, what are you getting out of that? Yes, you probably still need to check over the answers currently to verify them, right? I think it's irresponsible, even if we feel, and even if we've gone through all our training and we're getting like 100% accuracy rate, even if we did that, I still wouldn't want to say, yeah, you can just blindly trust it. I think at least as we stand now today, you need to sort of have someone verify those and look over them. But again, that 95% is getting right, and just the effort of reviewing what it's saying is saving you so much time instead of you having to go through everything yourself. If you can take that review that's given you and it's summarized it, and you can just quickly look over something that it's output based on a very complex problem, and it's giving a very simple answer, and it's sort of summarized that processing load that you as a person would have had to have gone through to sort of maybe verify that whole document, and it's put into a really simple, easy to read format that you can very quickly verify. That in itself is like a huge time saving. And, as time goes on, and, eventually we'll get to a point where you can start just, going, fine, I can actually just trust this with everything. That's your choice. But still, I just think that the whole accuracy sort of thing shouldn't be overlooked as to what it's doing to even get you to that point where it's sort of giving you the answer that you can then take and move along with. It can do a lot of that process.
But it's also interesting. How you're using and viewing an NLP. So, if we think about really the benefit is being able to understand your intent and being able to look at information and summarize it based on what you're asking. So if you're able to provide, and there are different scenarios where you could be pulling in fixed data that it has to reference, and that data is solid. It's not saying that you should rely on it to interpret everything and bring back that. I think in terms of interpretation, that's where you can only go so far with the prompting. But if you have concrete, if you're asking the question, it's interpreting and it's using automation to pull back specific data coming from a database, something that's verified, I think then, there's a high degree of, yes, this is accurate. But if you're relying on it to, well, this is the formula I want you to calculate, and it's, you must use whatever you can to calculate that within the NLP, then yes, it's probably a bit risky. But I think there are ways to lock down that accuracy and actually, use the power of that interpretation and its ability to summarize and sort of sort through information and return a more contextual answer to everyone's sort of benefit by combining technologies.
There's also two other sides to it. I think you sort of talked about them both in terms of accuracy. Right now, asking AI to do sort of processing for you, like try and come up with an answer to a market problem I have, right? Like, what's my forecast looking like next year? What are my numbers looking like? In terms of that accuracy, again, I would say, AI is not good at that side of things, trying to work through numbers. It can do it, but I wouldn't rely on it. But again, there are tools that you can plug in to ensure that accuracy. So the AI isn't doing it, but it is integrated with an API that can and is passing through very clear parameters. That's a very logical flow to determine that answer for you, and it returns it to the AI, and the AI gives it back to you. The AI is still doing all the work for you. It's just using very accurate tools to give you that answer. It's not just trying to magically do it itself. So yeah, just to add to a point that you can bring in external tools to make it accurate, and that you can validate and test against and be quite confident in. And then the other side of it, which is kind of like a UX side, when you get that answer back, how can I quickly verify that answer? Looking through citations, is there a way I can quickly see, okay, it's given me this answer. Can I quickly check through, and what does the UX look like to be able to validate that, go through all the documentation, let's say it was trained on, and just sort of pick out those pieces and show me, okay, this is where it actually got it from. Yes, that is accurate. Like I can see the sources it pulled from, and that looks right to me. And, again, that process takes like 1 minute, whereas if you were to review the entire document yourself, it would have taken like 3 hours. But yeah, it's just still a hugely valuable tool to be able to do that.
So don't be lazy when
Absolutely.
you integrate it. Don't think it's going to be the one all be all answer is what we're saying. But I think
Absolutely.
just a final point so we could jump to the next one is, with any new technology, the printing press, calculators, Excel, internet, computers, how accurate, how confident we are with the accuracy of what's being outputted with that certain technology. You always have to check. And again, you can't be lazy. Yeah, it's going to help you with a lot of things. It's going to help you streamline that process, but technology was never perfect to start off with. So
it's also putting in a place though, like you're starting to use this technology, and as it evolves, because you've integrated this part of the process into your workflow, as the technology improves and that accuracy goes up and up and up, you don't have to suddenly change your business and pivot around. Okay, well, I've been doing it like, really old way, this process flow, like, was very, manual and, relied on people. I heard AI was out, but it wasn't accurate, so I didn't take it on. You're falling behind competition. They are taking it on. They're way more efficient than you. But the bigger problem is that when it reaches a point where everyone is saying, wow, it is actually amazingly accurate, those companies that went ahead with this can very easily switch over to those new technologies. It's really part of their process. They've built it into their applications, into their workflows. It's very easy then to improve that accuracy over time. So as it improves, you can move along with that. If you're just sort of not wanting to touch it at all, you're just falling further and further and further behind. And when you do want to suddenly integrate it, suddenly you find yourself in a position where you have to do a huge mammoth task to get it in when it could have been a simple process just to start getting it and now to start moving in that direction. It may not be perfect, but you're moving with where the technology is going. You're not just sort of staying behind and finding yourself like way behind everyone else when you actually eventually want to get to it.
And that's something I think to add as well is kind of a caveat. And what we've seen with a lot of products that have gone to market is that you have no control over that. And that's a lot of the risk when you're actually making a decision between, right, do you get someone in to build something custom, or do you take an off-the-shelf product? What we've seen with a lot of the off-the-shelf is you have no control over the accuracy, over a lot of the settings that would control how your answer comes back. And also, if you want to change that model, whereas you go to the base tools, you can change to a completely different NLP if you do testing and find that suits your needs better as this evolves. I think it's about sort of setting yourself up to be as flexible as possible to kind of
very good points.
Stay aligned with the best solution, as you progress, because there is an investment in this, and there is often a long-term investment because you're building, whether it's content around it or data around it, and it's being able to shift with whichever company is actually providing the most accurate and the most capable model to use. So what do we say? That one's busted.
I think so. Maybe.
Yeah. It's really good at efficiency and just sort of working through really mundane tasks and just sort of giving you the answers that you're kind of looking for. But it doesn't really understand how to give you those answers. It doesn't understand what the questions even are. There's still human elements that need to really understand what you're working with and apply those AIs.